Okay, are we ready? Ready? Good evening, everyone. All of these people, how are you this evening? Welcome to the District 9 Community Engagement Meeting. The purpose of the meeting, well, we have the agenda, purpose, HISD Board of Education, the superintendent, board goals, superintendent constraints, the process, future, and then we have a Q&A section about that big. Okay? No, I'm just kidding. However long y'all need. Okay, why are we here today? To conduct a two-way communication and outreach with families and gather input, feedback on the board goals, to better understand what the community wants to see in the next iteration of the board's goals, which guide the district's work. So we need your help to help us with our future goals. HISD Board, Board of Education, oh, that's you? Okay. And this is Judith Cruz. Judith is the trustee for District 8.
Thank you, colleague Trustee Guidry. So thank you all for taking the time to be here. We're really excited to come and speak to you about our work and our purpose, and most importantly, to hear from you. So what the Board of Education does, it's very unique in terms of what elected officials typically do. We're not like city council, we're not like state reps. What we do is we hire the superintendent, we evaluate the superintendent, we hold the superintendent accountable to what we set as board goals, and that's why it's important for us to get the input from y'all today. And we approve the budget every June, and we start those workshops in the spring, so we had one last week. And we also approve and set the tax rate, and we, like I mentioned, monitor progress towards those goals that we set for the superintendent, and we do that on a monthly basis. Those are public meetings, they're broadcast, they're recorded, so if you have spare time, you can watch them.
The superintendent develops and implements the strategic plan to achieve the goals set by the board. So in other words, we set the board, we say the what, he says the how. That's how you have to remember it. We say the what, he says the how. A lot of times you all want to tell us to tell him to do it this way. The superintendent develops a budget to achieve the goals, and he monitors the progress towards the goals and adjusts course as needed. That's his job, right? We approve the budget, just like Judith says, but then he has to make those adjustments as needed. So when you're calling us and fussing at us, remember, we say what? He says how.
And so we have actually 4 goals. We did some work in 2020, actually right kind of in the middle of the pandemic. So these meetings that we're having now, we had them virtually. We had a survey virtually, and we looked at data and met together with administration and spent probably a good, I want to say at least 50 hours of virtual meetings collectively to come up with these goals. So it's not something we take lightly. So student outcome goals, the important thing to know about this is we have them focused on what students know and are able to do. So a lot of times people say, well, why are you using the STAR? I know a lot of people don't like the STAR, right? But it is a mandated state test. There are other metrics we could use, but that would probably mean an additional assessment, and we don't want to over-test our children. So we use the measure that already exists for our students. So 2 of our 4 goals are here. The first one is focused on students being able to read at 3rd grade. And you might be wondering why third grade instead of another grade. There's years and years of research that shows that if students are not able to read by third grade, their likelihood of even finishing high school, let alone going to college, diminishes greatly. And so that's why that is the focus. And then if students haven't been able to read by third grade, it's going to be really hard for them to be able to read word problems in math or read a history book, so many other subjects besides just reading, right? And so our baseline was 2019 because we wrote these goals in 2020, so we were looking at the year before's data. And these goals will expire in June of 2024, and that's why we are looking at and starting the conversations now so that we're ready to have those goals ready to go next year. So we set a goal to increase 8 percentage points, so 42% to 50% by 2024. So that's the amount of students that are at or above grade level reading in third grade. And then the second one is very similar. The percentage is a little bit different. The baseline was 46%. And this is for third grade math. Again, just kind of a benchmark year that we selected for our students. And then the last two goals that we have as a board, the third one is focused on college and career and military readiness. So I hear a lot of people say, well, not every student is going to go to college. And that is true. We want students to be able to have any opportunity that they want to have after high school. So that's why it's college and career and military readiness. But we want to make sure that students are prepared for something, right? They're not just leaving our doors and wondering, now what am I going to do that I graduated from high school, right? We want them to make sure that they have a career pathway. Maybe they have started or earned an industry certification such as welding or cosmetology or construction, or that they are ready to start college, that they've taken the coursework and the exams that have prepared them. So that's why that is important to us as a board. And there's different metrics that the state uses, and that's why we have a score. So 63% of our students in 2019, and that was based on the year before graduation, demonstrated that they were college, career, or military ready. And then we want that to increase to 71% by August of 2024. And then the last goal is focused on our students with special needs. I don't think it's any secret that we were struggling with making sure that our students that were identified were getting the services that they need, and so that has been a priority set by the board, and since Superintendent House has been here, he has definitely made that a priority. And this goal, we actually not just met it, but we superseded the target. So that's a testament to the work, that priority has been set. We want to make sure that all of our students, but most especially our students, our most vulnerable students, our students with special needs, are getting the services that they need in order to be successful. So that's why we measure that.
To say a little bit about the percentage, because everybody seems to wonder why 8% was placed on the increase. And I wasn't there during those discussions, and I think maybe even when I first got on the board and I was like, 8%, our children can do better than that. We need it higher, and I've made some noise about that, but what you don't understand, it's 9 people in there, and they had to negotiate. There were people who wanted it at 10, and there were people who wanted it at 4. So they came to a middle ground and got to the 8%. And so we're going to be doing that all over again. So just you all know, one trustee can't make that decision. It has to be an agreement between the trustees. Now the constraints. What are constraints? Constraints are the values of the community that must be honored by the superintendent. So board has goals, superintendent has constraints, okay? And so when we put those constraints together, we have to make sure that it is designed by the community. That's why we need y'all's input. That's why we're going out for these community meetings, not just for the board goals, but also for the constraints that's going to be placed on the superintendent. What the superintendent shall not do in the process of achieving the student outcome goals. So he's constrained from doing certain things. The superintendent will not allow the district to operate without a system to recruit and employ strong teachers. Please don't ask me a definition of strong teachers. We've gone through that and I don't have a definition. Strong is strong, okay? They can do the job and they can do it well. Who meet the needs of the students needing the most support. Number 2, the superintendent will not allow the district to operate without students having effective school-based wraparound support. And you all know we had that, the last meeting, I believe it was on wraparound, the wraparound services. Very important in all, and I'm sure the principals can attest to the value of their wraparound services. Number 3, the superintendent will not allow the district to operate without notifying parents, guardians, at least once each 12 weeks about how to help their student. If the student is 1 or more grade levels behind in literacy. So if your parents out there, be expecting and be looking for some information from the superintendent or the administration's office telling you that your child needs some help and here's how they can be helped and here's what needs to happen. The superintendent will not allow the district to operate without students receiving special education services meeting individualized education program, the IEP progress. The superintendent shall not allow the district to operate without providing high-quality, full-day pre-K. Necessary, right? Pre-kindergarten 4 and kindergarten programs for all students throughout the district at locations based on a data-driven, centralized method for identifying areas of highest need. So parents, if you all feel like you need a pre-K 3, pre-K 4 in your area, now is the time to speak up. That's why we're out here, to get input, so you all can tell us what you need and where you need it, okay?
So what we are looking for tonight and the purpose of this meeting, like Trustee Guidry said, we're having 2 months of meetings. So we're going out in groups of 3. We were gonna have one more colleague with us today, but she was feeling ill, so wasn't able to come. But we're going out in groups of 3. The first group did 3 meetings. We're doing 3 meetings. The next group is about to start. So we're going all across the district. We have an online version of the survey. Tonight's meeting will actually be posted. That's why it's being recorded, so that folks can engage and give us feedback, because we want to make sure that we have broad community support, that this isn't just a handful of parents or some teachers at one school or whatever it is. We want to make sure that we have students, we have teachers, we have community members, principals, everyone that has a role to play in the education of our students gives us their feedback. That's really important. And so we'll also together, once we compile all of this feedback, we'll use a root cause analysis and a needs assessment, and that's basically the research department in HISD does kind of analysis of all of the data, high school, middle school, elementary, where are the areas of greatest need. And then that helps us, together with the feedback we've heard, then decide the priorities that are most important, right? Because if you think about it, as a district, there are a lot of things that need to get done, right? And there's lots of different ages, and we want to make sure that we educate all students, but as a board, we want to make sure that we have set priorities that we're saying, superintendent, no matter what happens, this is the most important thing. And so that's what helps us set these priorities, is your input. And so once we have that, and just so y'all know, we're staying with these real close to what's on the board and what's been presented to you, because we want all of the trustees to say the same message. We don't want different messages, so we put together this message so that when we all go out, we're saying the same thing. Now, I may add a few things, but it's not on the script. Looking forward, progress monitoring, 5-year calendar to monitor progress for student outcome goals and ensure superintendent is honoring the constraints and adjusting the course as needed. And here's what we want you all to do. You can utilize
what is it called? QR code, there you go, so that you can complete the survey. Also, I think that you have some sheets in front of you that you can utilize the sheets in front of you as well. Here is why we're here. We're here because we need to hear from you now. Don't wait until the board goes into discussions and we come out with our goals and we come out with the constraints, and then you all start talking to us as if we didn't come out to speak to you, right? This is your opportunity, and we need you. You are the community. You are the voice. You are the people who elected us to speak on your behalf. This is your opportunity to speak to us so that when we go into these sessions to make these discussions, I've heard from my community. I know what my community wants. I'm going to place it in the goals, and I'm going to place it in the constraints as best I can, working with the other 8 trustees, right? So don't give it to us after. Give it to us before, as best you can. And I know things come up after that y'all look at it and say, wait a minute, what about this and what about that? We're trying to really, really get ahead of that this time to give you all, to open the door for as much conversation as you want. We want to hear from you. So we now want to hear directly from you about our board goals, and here are some guiding questions. Are you on the guiding questions? Okay.
Okay, so 3 things to keep in mind as you are filling out your form, and also we want to have an open discussion today, but please, whatever you share, make sure that you include either on the online or paper form. So what opportunities for improvement do you see in our current goals, the ones that we shared? What values would you like to see in our next iteration of board goals? And what other information would you like to see from the district in developing the board's goals? So maybe there's other priorities that you feel like are more pressing than the ones that we chose, that will expire next year. So we'll take some questions. I mean, this is a pretty small group, but we do need you to speak in the mic. So we'll probably pass around the other mic since this is being recorded. And just be mindful of your time so that we can get a chance to hear from everyone. So comments or questions around what you believe should be the priorities. So remember, the board goals are what students should know and be able to do. The constraints are, imagine them like guardrails. We're saying, superintendent, you can do anything that you think is possible to reach our goals, but within these guardrails, right? And I think everybody has a card, and if you don't, we'll pass those back around, that have the current goals and guardrails that can or constraints that can help it serve as a guide. So.
One of the things that stuck in my head was the 12 weeks with reporting to the parents or getting the parents involved after 12 weeks. I'm old school. My mother was at school about once a month. So, not that we were bad kids, but she was just there. Everybody at the school knew her. I think that's part of one of the things that we've lost is having the parents involved more on a continual face-showing basis in the schools or with their teachers, the principals.
Can you say that again for the people on screen?
I'll stand up. I think that if you don't get the parents involved on a continuous basis, hands-on type of situation, 12 weeks, they can use any excuse they want to say, I didn't know, I haven't seen this, I didn't know my child was failing in this particular subject, I haven't had any feedback. They had progress reports that went home every 6 weeks for my kids. I look for those progress reports because not only did I want to see what their grades were, I want to see conduct. So if the parents, and nowadays we have a parent relationship problem, big problem, because I have two daughters that are in the system. One is a counselor, one is a principal. My ex-wife, that's a school teacher. So I hear all of these stories all the time. The problems, the need, and most of it is relationship. It's relationship because there's no relationship with the teachers and the parents. And then there's a relationship problem with the parents and the kids. Because most of the time the grandparents are raising the kids and they're really past their time to raising kids. But we have these parents at home that are not being parents. So if you force them in a way to have to be present and have to come to the school and meet with the staff, the teachers, find out just what's going on with your kid, I think that's a good start because we can hide behind 12 weeks. We can hide very easily. And the career days, I used to go to schools and do career days. And I remember I did one at Yates. And one of the kids stood up, I asked him what was his aspirations for when he finished high school. And believe it or not, he said he wanted to be a professional gangster. Okay? So my remark to him was, when you leave high school, after 5 years, there's an event called class reunion. And usually at the class reunion, you talk about what you've done the last 5 years. And I told him he wouldn't make the first class reunion because he's going to be either dead or in jail. And that's what's going on today. That is what's happening today. These kids are either dead or in jail. They don't make their first 5-year class reunion. And so the parents have to be involved. They have to be involved. They have to be present. When my kids went to school, everybody at the school knew me. I had a nickname. I won't give it out, but I had a nickname at the school because I was there all the time. They knew me. They knew my kids. If my kids got in any kind of discipline problem, I was there. So you have to bring that back because they're hiding.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
So are you suggesting that we have a goal that requires the parents to do something?
Absolutely.
So, and that's what we want to see on the survey. So one of your suggestions is that we have a goal surrounding parent involvement. And I love that idea. I absolutely love it. I don't know. Now keep in mind, we can only have 5 goals, right? That's the most we can have. And TEA has a requirement on 3 that we must have. So really the board only gets to have 2 more goals. So keep that in mind. And remember, we're going to every campus. So we're going to hear ideas from all over. So you can hear, we're going to hear ideas from all over. So if you don't see it in a goal, it's not because we didn't hear you. It's because we had to negotiate and get to an idea that we heard maybe more in more of the campuses, or perhaps we needed something more focused. Okay?
And let me just add something. Thank you so much for bringing that up because, you know, as you saw, the constraint that we have is that the administration has to communicate at a minimum, right, every 12 weeks. And we recognize that that's a pretty long stretch. But I think the key was there, the spirit of that when we were writing it was really thinking about what is the school doing to communicate, right, and bring in those parents. Because that's also a critical piece and that important piece. So thank you for raising that. I appreciate that.
Hi, thank you. I'm Naomi Doyle-Madrid. Oh,
Yeah, come over here.
am I on camera? Oh. I'm Naomi Doyle-Madrid. I am a parent here in HSD. I have a 3rd grader, a 6th grader, and a graduate. He graduated in May, and he's in college, and it's stressing me out. So my questions are, I do think it's interesting, the 12-week piece, because it states here, if the student is 1 or more grade level behind in literacy, which is a limitation in terms of parental involvement. So that to me is kind of a limitation. My question is, how are the superintendent's constraints monitored? Because they're good, but how do we know they're actually meeting the goals? And then related to the goals that you have, which I kind of like, I had 2 kids in the dyslexia program, and they are now reading. My 6th grader is now at a 9th grade level, and my 3rd grader is at a 4th grade level. So I think that's pretty darn good. But I watch the budget meetings, and I'm concerned that the cuts that are being proposed by the admin, will they impact these board goals? Do we have a strategic plan with those cuts to make sure that our reading and our math scores don't go down? Okay, and then my last question is, and this is, people are angry about this, but I have grave concerns about the standardized math curriculum that is being implemented right now. It's at my middle school, and my child, who is a straight A student, had a 26 in her second 6 weeks. Star scores are going to suffer, I think. And we're getting ready to implement standardized math in all of our elementary schools, and they're talking about standardized science. I sit on the district advisory committee. We did not review the curriculum before it was approved, and I have grave concerns on its impact on the goals for reading and math. So 3 questions.
See if I can,
Or 3 issues.
yeah, so I'm trying to remember what your first one was. Yes, so we actually monitor both the goals and the constraints, and we do that twice a month. So we have a 5-year calendar, like Trustee Guidry mentioned, and the goals, we monitor each of those 4 times a year, and the constraints I think we do twice a year. So we actually have, for each of the goals and the constraints, we have what we call progress measures. I'm trying to think of an example. So like for the wraparound supports, we have one around the number of students that are being served, right? So they give us that data so that we know it's not just, okay, superintendent, here you go, we want you to do this. We actually are monitoring on a regular basis publicly, and then the evaluation for the superintendent is based 100% on the goals and the constraints. So this is how we know how our students are doing. So that's really critical. And then what was some of your
And let me just add to that. And what you all don't see is even before we come into the board meetings, we do board referral questions on the data. So we'll get the data. We get a lot of questions answered even before we come out on the board meetings. So we ask, trust me, we ask a lot of questions. We delve into it. What you hear on the dais is items that we didn't get resolved, and we want them resolved in some sort of way, or we want the administration to go back and reevaluate. So those are the things that you will hear on the dais, but don't think we're not reviewing and asking questions and asking stuff of the administration even before it gets out to the board meeting.
And then I think one of the things I heard you mention was your students with special needs and how you want that to continue to be a priority because you've seen the results of that having been a priority. Did I hear you correctly?
Well, the second one was the budget cuts being proposed and the
Yes.
impact of the goals on reading and math.
Yes.
Is there a strategic plan being proposed that will ensure that our schools are adequately funded to continue those services?
So that's a great question, and we are at the very beginning of our conversations about the budget, and that's something that I think most of the trustees want to make sure that the students and their achievement isn't going to be impacted, right, by the budget, right? We set these priorities. We're saying, superintendent, these are the priorities, no matter what happens, and there will have to be cuts because we have a ginormous deficit, but we want to make sure that our students are least affected. So we're in the very beginning of those conversations. There is nothing that has been voted on. That vote actually doesn't happen until June. So, and we have a second workshop. It's the week after spring break, whatever that Thursday is. So those are all broadcast. If you're not able to watch them because they are in the middle of the day, they're recorded. So you are able to stay tuned. But I do appreciate you raising that concern.
And keep in mind, as trustees, we have to balance, right? We have to approve a budget. We have to get that done. Our deficit is it is looming to be extreme. So we have to find some ways. So we have to do a balancing act to make sure that our kids get everything they need, but also that this district doesn't go under completely. So we understand the concerns, of course, of the parents and especially parents with special needs, and that's one of our high priorities. So I don't think you have to worry on that end. That will be covered, but keep in mind also, I think the community can look at it straight way in. We have to look at it at all sides. So we're doing a balancing act over here. And then she had one last question, and then I'll give it to you. And I think that was...
I think it was about the instructional materials. So kind of going back to what Trustee Guidry mentioned, right? We set the priorities. We say, superintendent, this is what we want you to do. The how is decided by the administrative team, right? What materials they're going to use. Now, we can hear the concerns. We can definitely share those concerns. It's important for us to be aware of that. It doesn't mean that that's not within our wheelhouse to decide. But I do hear your concern, and we can definitely share that with the administration.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to come out, so that the community can understand we all have roles, and we can't step outside of our lane. Our lane is the what. The how is something we really can't tell the administration. Again, as Trustee Cruz said, we can discuss the concerns of the community, but we essentially can't tell the administration on how to do the job.
Louis Morris, I'm a community member. And just like Mr. Forte stated earlier, I'm old school. When we're talking about college and career readiness, a lot of kids are not going to go to college. But I remember when I was in high school, they had a lot of vocational classes, wood shop, metal shop, auto mechanic, cosmetology. Some of your South early colleges, high schools have that. Why is not, that should be offered to all the high schools to partner up with HCC to have these type of courses inside the high school. Because I know that's one thing that made kids want to come to school, because they was a part of that, and because they wanted to be involved in it, it was something they enjoyed doing. So I feel like it was preparing them for doing something after high school. Even if they didn't go to college, they were able to have a trade. If they come in 4 years and begin at 9th grade, start taking some of these courses, at their senior year, they can have a certification where they can go and get a good job. So when we say college and career readiness, are we really preparing, the district really preparing them for college and career readiness? So that's one thing I would like for the district to look at. But another thing, I'm at around all these schools in HISD. The budget for each school gets cut every year. And it seems like we are asking the schools to operate in a way that they don't have the ability to, and the finances too. Because of every year the budget gets cut at these schools, so it's less that the schools can do. One of the years, the 5-year plan I know for the superintendent is wraparound specialists in every school. But that grant is ending next year. So what is the district prepared to maintain wraparounds in the schools after the grant ends? Because don't know if you're going to get that grant again, but wraparounds are still needed in those schools. So I'm just want to know if the district is prepared for that time when it happens. So those are the 3 things.
So thank you so much for sharing. And just to clarify, college and career, includes exactly what you're talking about. There's certifications, and there are many of our schools offer a wide variety, right? One high school will offer one thing, and another high school offers a different kind of certification. And what we want to ensure is that there is access for more of those programs, that our students can choose a certification or they can choose to go to college, right? It doesn't have to be, well, this is the only opportunity I had and I don't want to do that, right? So we want to make sure that there is access for that. So thank you for raising that. And then, what was the second thing? Sorry. Oh, the wraparound. So currently, the wraparound specialists are being funded with the ESSER, the federal stimulus money, right? And you are correct, that will run out next year. However, that is also a priority in our constraints that we did set for the superintendent. So it will have to be determined, right? We will have to find that money if that's going to continue to be a priority for the district. So we'll see. But yes, I mean, that has been a priority for us.
How could school funding?
Yeah, and let me get to that. It seems like I'm the one that come back around every time with the doom and gloom, okay? But just what you said, I think you have an amen corner back here on the schools being, from the principals on the schools being cut, their budgets being cut. But again, we would love to have all of those programs on all of the campuses, really, particularly the middle and then going into high school, right? We would love to see that, but where's the money? And that's what the budget, we're doing these workshops. We're going to be asking these questions because we have a lot of campuses reaching out to us saying, hey, we'd like to have, and that's another thing that the community has to speak on. We can't just throw programs onto campuses. We have to hear from the community as to what their children would like to see and what will bring children back onto the campus as far as the programs are concerned, right? Because everybody's asking for a program and you want this and he wants that and she wants that, but what do we actually need in a particular, and what I'd like to see more of is a feeder pattern type curriculum. So what's in that feeder, where you go to middle school, you'll start there, and once you get to high school, you finish there, right? As opposed to now I have to go out of my district, or I have to go here, I have to go there, so that I can complete my, my CTE or my magnet. We want to make sure that those magnets stay within the feeder pattern. I know we don't have them anymore at HISD, but I'd like to see something that looks like a feeder pattern again.
You're speaking truth to everything, right?
Sorry, will you come up just because it's being broadcast? I know, but it's the broadcast, sorry.
Okay, so, Parker has the music magnet program, right? And I would like to see that replicated in another part of D9, but I can talk about that later. But we went to Westbury High School because our feeder pattern leads to Westbury High School, and they didn't have an orchestra. And there's probably about 10 of us parents, I'm not an orchestra parent, but we were like, what do we need to do to get an orchestra program here? Because we don't want our kids, they're not all gonna go to HSPVA, and Bel Air is really big. And it was like, can we get an orchestra program started so that we have that feeder? And they're only gonna take 10 kids, maybe. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. They're only gonna take 10 kids maybe this fall, but it's a start. And it's bringing kids back to Westbury High School I'm in Westbury, from our neighborhood. And I'm hoping it builds up our high school. So I hear you, and I think, my name is Naomi, and I am here to help you and try to help you build programs at those schools. Because we also got a auto mechanic program at Westbury and a beauty shop, I think, and both of those programs are awesome.
And to Trustee Guidry's point, right, it comes from the community and the parents and the community members saying, hey, we don't have this at this school, this is a need. We can say all day what we think, or the administration, but really it's so much more meaningful, and it will sustain itself if the community is saying these are the programs we want. So please indicate that in your, we have just a few minutes, so.
We get our feedback emails, we get phone calls, we
Coming
get
to meetings like
surveys
this.
coming to these meetings like this. There is,
The form.
yeah, there's a form to fill out. I mean, just, listen, we're talking about goals and constraints, but any ideas you all want to submit, now is the time. Because we're looking at the budget, we're looking at funding, we're looking at campuses and what they need. So put anything on that survey you'd like for us to hear about, and we're gonna collect those, we're gonna review those, we're gonna go through them, and we're gonna make decisions based on those surveys. So we need y'all to respond. Please respond.
Yeah, and just to add to that really quick, so just make sure that you do include, what you want to be the highest priority, right? You might have a list of things, these are all the things we want, but we have to focus on the priorities, what students are able to do once they leave our campuses, right? And then the constraints, maybe that there is something around fine arts or certifications, right? Say, superintendent, these are the priorities, but these are the things that you absolutely must do in order to meet those priorities, and everything else, the superintendent and their team get to decide.
Well, I know every year they have a back-to-school event. HISD has one every year given away. And I think that would be a great time to utilize that time to meet with parents and say, we need you involved. We need your support. We need your help to try to get parents engaged at these, because we find out parents will come out to get these, but how about at that time trying to get them to get involved at the same time? Another thing, the thing of No Child Left Behind. I went to a school, kid was in the 4th grade, didn't know how to read, was still writing sideways on his paper. But he just was pushed on through and not, how is that being monitored if a child is not prepared to go to the next grade? Is he pushed on to the next grade? Because if this, and let's be honest about it, because if this continues to happen, by the time he get to high school, if he didn't learn it in elementary, he get to middle school, he's gonna be behind. They're gonna hold him back, or if they continue to push him through, he gets to high school, he's not gonna finish, he's gonna drop out.
Right. And that's why we have that goal where we monitor for reading and math. But let's be real about this thing. We have a percentage that shows HISD. What it doesn't show, and we've just started to having it show now, are our black and brown children. Because our black and brown children are the ones who are at the bottom of the totem pole. So what we have been focusing on is shooting in right there and getting those who need the most help. That's why the superintendent has set up the RISE schools, because those are the schools that have been determined to be the campuses that need the most help. So I hear what you're saying, and we do monitor it as a board, but we have to monitor it as a district, right? And so as a district, we'll see, okay, the district is doing, it's supposed to be at 58 or 47%, they're at 37%, right? We did not meet goal. So if you watch the board meetings, you'll see where the superintendent or the administration will do a presentation to us, and it will say, goal not met. And so then we have the opportunity to delve into, well, why wasn't it met? What could have been done differently? What can we do different this time? What's working in this district or at this campus that's not working at this campus? Can we implement it? So we are asking those type of questions, and that's the only way we can get through to it, right? And get as close to that kid who can't read as possible.
And just to add to that, so that is a critical point, and that's why it is a priority. And even though the goal says 3rd grade, the progress monitoring that we do is also 1st and 2nd grade, because we recognize if students aren't learning, right, we don't want to just pass them along, but we want to make sure that they're actually learning to read. And so that is a priority for the board. And like Trustee Guidry mentioned, when we're asking those questions, we're hoping that the superintendent, maybe if there are questions that he and his administration haven't asked themselves, then it's like, oh, let's dig a little deeper. I hadn't thought of it that way. Or maybe we've asked something that they already have thought of, and then they can share what they're doing. But that helps us dig into what these priorities, because that is really, really critical. So we're at time.
Yes. Thank you all for coming out. We certainly do appreciate it. I know y'all came through the traffic like we did, and you made it over here. We appreciate it. We appreciate those of you who are viewing us live stream and who will have an opportunity to go back and review this. And we're not doing this just for show. We're doing this because we honestly want some feedback from the community and our stakeholders. So please fill out those forms and let us know what you all are thinking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.